Welcome to the Raising the Standard show. I'm Dr. Andrea Ramirez. I am thrilled that you've joined us for this show. I've been anticipating this particular topic for a couple of months, and I know you're just not going to want to miss it. Our theme today is Rise to the Call. God has placed a calling on your life and every student's life that is around you, and we know that God is equipping you to equip those students. And so we've invited Dr. Antipas Harris today to share with us. We have Reverend Rigo Mendez, who's going to be sharing a challenge with us. And we're just thrilled to see what God is going to be doing in our lives. We know that He is, for this time, He is preparing us to know how to step into our calling, our purpose. We know that our earthly assignments are connected to our eternal assignments. And it's our job to be going to the Father, asking Him what He wants us to be doing every day that is connecting our earthly assignments to our eternal assignments. And so I want to go ahead and welcome our guest, and we're going to go ahead and dive in. Dr. Antipas Harris, there's so many things I want to share about you with our viewers. Dr. Antipas is an associate professor of practical theology and ministry at Regent University School of Divinity and the president of Guild Incorporated, but you also were a founding member of the Faith and Education Coalition, and we're just thrilled to have you here.
Dr. Ramirez, I'm ecstatic. Thank you for the invitation. It's a blessing to be here.
Absolutely. We know that God has created you to be a thought leader. You're a scholar, and I say this so our viewers will know that the Lord has placed a word on your heart for us all, for His church, and it's called Rise to the Call. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I really believe that God has given all of us talents and gifts. They're not always the same. And many times people look at other people's talents and gifts and feel as if they don't have the same gifts and talents they have, that a lot of attention may be drawn to those particular gifts, then maybe they don't have a gift or talent or purpose at all. Because usually when we measure our talents against other people's talents, we also measure our purpose against other people's purpose. And if you measure purposes, you're going to measure destinies.
Right.
And I really believe that God created everyone to have equal footing in society and to contribute different gifts and talents. And so Rise to the Call is about drawing out the God-given talents and purposes that we have within us to contribute to what I like to call the beloved community, as Martin Luther King called it, or to call it the kingdom of God, what God intends His world to look like.
I love that, the beloved community.
That's right.
Great. So what is the word specifically for parents? Let's talk about parents for a while. How can parents rise to the call?
Well, first of all, Proverbs teaches us that parents are to train up children in the way they should go so that when they are old, they will not depart. I really believe that passage in Proverbs 22:5 speaks to the parent's role to rise to the call to help children to become all that God has called for them to be. And to do all that God has called for them to do. And parents have a extraordinary role because all children want to be told what to do. It's part of who we are. Children hunger for guidance. And also, so the enemy knows that, right?
Right.
So the enemy plants seeds in people's minds to have kids doing things they should not be doing. And kids will do it because we like to say in education, they're impressionable, right? They're vulnerable, easily guided, and that's a good thing. But it's a good thing when parents have risen to the call to train the kids, because parents are the first teacher, they're the first mentors, they're the first nurturers, they're the first guides and leads for children. And and as a pastor, most of the situations that I counseled with folk who have difficult adult lives, and I asked them, where did this start? Where does it come from? Inevitably, people will go back to their childhood.
Right.
And time again, especially when I've counseled rape cases, they have gone back to 4, 5, 6 years old. And so I think this speaks to your question, because I think parents have an opportunity as well as a responsibility to protect, to teach, to guide young children, because it will help them for long-term goals and objectives in life.
You know, that brings to mind one of my favorite things that my dad did for me is he kept a journal
Yes.
of when he was raising me at 4 and 5 to say, this is what I'm noticing about you. This is what I think God is calling you to do, or this is what I see you talented in. And to read back through, or this is a lesson that I'm having trouble getting through to you,
Yeah.
but I'm praying through. To get to see his insight as a parent is phenomenal to me now as a parent, to go back, because one of the things he would tell me when we were dialoguing when I was a teenager, and you know, I might have been needing a little extra instruction during that time, he was telling me, I know you, I've known you longer than you've known yourself. I've gotten to see God establish patterns in you, and so I can now tell you what those patterns are of your strengths and maybe things to watch out for. It's just but he stepped into his role.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of parents find it difficult sometimes because they might feel discouraged to step into that role. What obstacles do you see parents and people in general facing when they're trying to rise to that call?
Well, I think now society is such that we have children raising children. And so we have a bit of a cycle where parents sometimes have been the product of the lack of training. So many times those parents don't know what it means to be a parent,
Right.
because perhaps they didn't have someone who knew what it meant to be a parent, because they were young when they had them and things like that. So I think part of it has to do with training. Parents need to be trained as well, and that's a good thing. That's not a sort of a pejorative term. Training. Train up a child, train people. That's what I do for a living, train people. But going back to the train up a child, teach them, show them, help them, direct them, point them to a direction that you may not even go as a parent. I think of my parents. A lot of things that I'm doing and a lot of opportunities that I have, they have never had these particular opportunities, being on this show. So, but what they did do, they took me up the mountain, and they pointed to the next mountain and said, the same way I help you come up this mountain, you're going to go up the next mountain. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can point them in a direction to help them, because that's the beautiful thing about leadership in general, is that leaders, good leaders, bring people along and then try to get them further than they are.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So that the legacy moves where they cannot move themselves. So that's what parents have an opportunity to do, to live on through their children and point them in a direction that when we're rested in the bosom of Abraham, we can rest assured that our kids are taking the legacy on. It's about investing in the future.
That's so good. There's so much that I want to park on. I know that you and I have a shared interest in ensuring that every child in this country has equality, and that they have access to quality education. What can we as the church do to help ensure that that happens?
Oh, we can do tons of things, from adopting schools. A church that I'm a part of, First Presbyterian Church in Norfolk, Virginia, we inspired our congregation to buy uniforms for our local school, one of the local schools, because they found out that a lot of kids in the distressed communities, some of the learning obstacles have to do with them not having clothes or shoes. And if someone else have better clothes than they do, it's a distraction. It creates bullying and all kinds of things. So one of the brilliant things I think that the school district did was that they required these students in this particular school to have uniforms. So we thought, hey, well, they need uniforms, we can help buy the uniforms.
Right.
So that's a way of partnering with the schools and helping kids in distressed communities, particularly, help them to have a better education. But then there's mentoring and tutoring, right? There is providing support for teachers. Right? The public schools have limited resources to support teachers. What about churches doing things to help the teachers? An extension of our mission to help educate our kids is to support teachers in all kinds of ways. One pastor said from Boston, he said what his church did was just decided to go and get Starbucks cards and take them to the teachers and say, I just want to encourage you. That inspires the teachers to do the things that they need to do to feel appreciated, right? We can work better when we feel appreciated.
Yes, we can.
So,
Yes, we
I mean, those are small things, but they have great dividends. Small investment bring great dividends. And I think oftentimes we overlook the small things that can have great dividends, looking for bigger things.
Right.
That really don't produce as much. It just creates a fight why the church shouldn't be involved. But there are things we can do. What we can do is make sure that we have the church can promote education, right, from the pulpit in different programs in the church. We can integrate some of the standards in our biblical teachings and our Sunday school, right? The standards are the same. How can we reinforce them? The church VBS, most of the VBS I've seen need to be overhauled, because one of the ways that we can support education is that we can bring the standards into a revised curriculum for VBS during the summer, right?
Yeah, to help that learning
Right,
continue.
right, because more and more Christian schools are closing down because of resources. So why not just take a little 2 or 3 weeks in the summer and have a mini school, right, where we can draw in the public school standards and we can have whatever type of curriculum around those standards, and we can help kids through the summer slump.
And really connect with them where they're at, because I think that's such a huge part. I mean, what a powerful idea, because then you have students, because the reality is they're going to school and they may be behind or ahead, and if you can provide something in the summer that helps bridge them through, that's phenomenal. That's great.
Oh, absolutely.
Before we only have about a minute left, but I really want to ask you a question about taking tests, because I think that sometimes that can be intimidating.
Yes.
But what is a biblical way to look at taking a test?
Well, I think tests, the Bible is really built on tests, right? Trying our faith, right?
Yep.
The trial of our faith worketh patience.
True.
That's the test,
That's
right?
true. That's true.
I think that God even said in the Old Testament, test me, when it was related to tithing, right? So this idea of tests, I think, really speaks to equalizing the playing field so that we can have some matrix by which we judge how well we're doing. And that's not a bad thing. We need to know how weak our faith is, so why not know how weak our education is?
That's so
how
good.
strong our faith is, how strong our education, because it's these virtues, and I do think that education is a virtue, they actually become tools that God give us in order for us to succeed in society or in this life.
Whew, that's powerful. Don't go anywhere. I know you're going to be back with us for the practical tip. We want to hear more. Just such a powerful way of viewing our everyday life, and so just praise God for you. We do want you to know what's happening around the country. Take a look at this video and find out how you can get involved.